In 1974, I landed at AMC at Pinkham Notch and worked there and got to know folks that worked at the observatory, and then got it in my head that I wanted to work there. And it was a hard sell because they didn't hire girls. The director at that time, Guy Gosselin, wonderful guy, took a real chance and hired me. And I was not an observer. I was hired. They were just starting up the museum on the summit. And I lived in the very old observatory building, which is no longer there. It used to be the largest wood frame building, or strongest wood frame building in the world. Not the largest, the strongest. And I was hired to be a museum attendant, but then the museum shuts down in September. And I stayed on doing all sorts of projects with the observatory. So my goal was to stay through the winter, but around February, March, I became a stark raving maniac because I was living with some extremely eccentric men in a very small space for 2 weeks at a time. But that experience led to all different experiences because I worked at the OBS, the top 50 acres or so of the summit, or New Hampshire State Park. And I got to know the state park people. And so then I was the first girl that they hired to work for the state park system on Mount Washington. So I actually lived and worked up there for the state parks. And again, the buildings I lived and worked in are no longer there. The old observatory was torn down, and the state park building was an old hotel built at the turn of the century. It's so gratifying now. I help with the observatory with, they invite me back every year, and I help organize the tours on the summit for the inside the observatory. But I stopped by the state park desk up there, and there are 2 women sitting there, and I said, I was the first of you. And we had such a fun conversation, and they said, well, we have all girls now. So it's amazing in 50 years. It makes me feel great. It really does. And the observatory some years has had all female crew. I think you have these moments that come across in your life, and maybe at the time they don't seem like they're huge things that you make a decision about, but in retrospect, they become huge things. And that's kind of how I remember a lot of the stuff here. I've been helping Seek the Peak for probably, for pretty much the last 20 years. And I'm just constantly impressed by the hikers. My whole philosophy about this is to create a community. And so when I started running things for the Seek the Peak tours up there, I was like, okay, all the Seek the Peak hikers are the VIPs. So we're treating them like VIPs. But it's fun for me. I get to come back. I fly up here from Maryland every year, and I get together with my old AMC friends. There's a lot of history for the observatory. There's been a tremendous amount of changes, and it's a great organization. I think the fact that it's a nonprofit, but they've been involved in all this scientific research. My special affiliation with it is their education. So now Brian Fitzgerald, who's the director of education, for example, has put in these new initiatives working with a lot of schools in the area. That never happened before. It was like, the mountain was there, but local kids didn't go up it. There was no relationship, and I think forming those relationships now is really good.
My name is Margaret Jividen. I interned for the observatory in 2017, a while ago now. But actually, if we go to the initial story about it, I came up to Mount Washington when I was 7, and I told my mom then and there, I'm going to live in New Hampshire and be a meteorologist. And somehow I lost sight of that for a little bit and ended up, I always wanted to study meteorology, forgot about New Hampshire for a bit, and then ended up with the internship in 2017. So it's amazing seeing how much things change and develop up at the summit and how the internship has changed. Last night at Tuckerman's, I got to talk to an intern from 2008 who never wrote any forecasts, and I wrote forecasts when I was up there, and then there's different types of interns. Like, it's just so different now. But also it's been bittersweet. Like, now I only know Ryan. Like, he was the only observer I know, and just seeing people move on and seeing how everything changes. But it just makes me proud no matter what. I think so many people relate to the weather. Like, when we were making small talk, we always talk about the weather. But knowing that there's people doing this research still, that we're still trying to understand the atmosphere, makes it such a basic way to be able to spread science education to people and climate education to people, because everyone sees the weather, but we all know that it's hard to predict, but why? And so being able to take such a historic area and have a story behind it and have real people to talk to about it, it just makes it so much more tangible for people to understand the changes that are happening around us and just why it is so critical to do the research and spread the education. People's love for the observatory stems from a lot of different places, whether it's the history, the science, the hiking, there's families that come all the time, but people all come together to support such a big cause, whether they understand the research being done or not, whether they hike themselves or not, and that hopefully that can make an impact not only in the White Mountains, not only in the presidential range, but to the state, to the country, beyond. I'll be here for my 10th year next year, but it's really cool to be part of something that's been going on for so long. Even if it's a little tiny part of the history, it was a big part of my life.
I live in Orford, New Hampshire, and I have for 40-something years. We've been members for quite a while, and people get to know what the observatory does. So by hiking up, you get a chance to talk with the observers, have them answer questions, and you get to go up to the top of the tower. The mountain provides so many opportunities educationally and, research, science research, and knowing what weather is going to be coming. Yeah.
I worked at the observatory from 2015 to 2020, so I try to make it back at least once per year. I worked as a summit observer. So our day, you do a week on, week off schedule up there, so you'd spend 8 days up on the mountain, then 6 days off. My primary role was working during the day, so I'd help out with some of the IT and then coding of the VTARs for our observations and maintaining equipment out there as well. So definitely busy in the winter, kind of more relaxed in the summer. So there's very few locations that has the ability to measure extreme conditions, because most of the time you have to have somebody involved to help get the instrumentation up and running. So it's really unique, the fact that we have the ability to stay up there and constantly measure what was going on. That's probably one of the coolest places to work.
My name is Laura De La Flor from Salem, Mass. My background is in environmental biology, ecology. It's so cool to hike this mountain in the summer, because you have a transition, of not only your vegetation, but of the species that are here breeding. And once you get up to that 3,000–4,000 foot, you're in boreal, and it's just a whole different world. Yeah. And like Mark said, I hope, everybody that's hiking and fundraising, it all helps to preserve this amazing place.